There's something about the highway at twilight. The way the trees cast long, skeletal shadows across the road. The way the sun dips just below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of red and orange, as if God himself has taken a brush and smeared the day with blood. It's beautiful, in a haunting kind of way, but it's also the kind of beauty that can turn on you when you're not looking. Mackenzie adjusted her seatbelt, trying to get comfortable. The car's engine hummed softly, and Chris was silent beside her, focused on the road ahead. They'd been doing this trip for years, ever since they started dating. A little ritual of theirs. Every summer, like clockwork, they'd pack up the car and head to the beach, just the two of them. A few days of sun, sand, and the illusion that nothing bad could ever happen. But of course, bad things could always happen. They just hadn't happened to them yet. "I need to stop," Mackenzie said, breaking the silence. There was an edge in her voice, a discomfort that had been building over the last few miles. "I really need to go." Chris glanced at her, then back at the road. "Can you wait until we're home? We're only an hour away." "No, Chris, I can't wait." She shifted in her seat, feeling a pang of urgency. "There's that park a few miles up near Greenfield, remember?" He sighed but nodded. "Yeah, I remember." "All right, we'll stop there, but let's make it quick. It's getting late." The park was small, barely more than a patch of grass with a playground and a pond that looked like it had seen better days. As they pulled into the gravel parking lot, Mackenzie noticed a single car parked under the shade of some trees. It was old, probably 20 years past its prime, and it looked like it hadn't been washed in just as long. A beat-up white sedan with a cracked windshield and a sagging bumper. Something about it made Mackenzie uneasy, but she pushed the feeling aside. After all, they were in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't much else around except for miles of back roads and endless rows of trees. The kind of place where people drove old cars because there wasn't much point in buying new ones. They parked, and as Mackenzie stepped out, she felt a strange stillness in the air. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the park, and the wind was dead, leaving the trees standing like silent sentinels. She shivered, but told herself it was just the chill of the evening. "Let's go," Chris said, already halfway to the bathroom. Mackenzie hurried to catch up, trying to shake off the creeping sense of unease. The bathroom was a small, squat building with two doors, one labeled men and the other women. The light above the entrance flickered, casting a sickly yellow glow over the concrete steps. "I'll be quick," she said, and Chris gave her a mock salute, his lips curling into a grin. Mackenzie pushed open the door to the women's room, and the first thing that hit her was the smell. It wasn't bad exactly, just the smell of damp concrete and old soap. The kind of smell that lingered in places that had seen thousands of people come and go, but had never really been cleaned. She glanced at herself in the mirror above the sink, noting the slight smudge of mascara under her left eye. Her reflection seemed distant, almost unfamiliar. She blinked, then turned away, making her way to the first stall. That's when she noticed the feet. Two sneakers, Converse, black with white laces, poking out from under the door of the next stall. The legs above them were clad in black skinny jeans, the kind teenagers wore. Mackenzie hesitated, a prickle of unease running down her spine. She hadn't seen anyone else in the park except for that old car. But the feet weren't moving, and she figured whoever was in there was probably just another traveler, stopping off on their way to somewhere else, just like her and Chris. She pushed open the door to her stall, but before she could step inside, a giggle echoed through the small space. It was high-pitched, almost childlike, and it made her skin crawl. Mackenzie froze, her heart pounding in her chest. It was just a laugh, she told herself, just some kid messing around. But then she saw it, out of the corner of her eye, something that didn't make sense. Fingers. Black, twisted, inhuman fingers curling around the edge of the stall door. Her breath caught in her throat. They were wrong, those fingers. Too long, too thin, with no nails, just pointed tips that looked more like claws than anything human. And they weren't solid. They were fuzzy, like a bad TV signal, like something her eyes couldn't quite focus on. She stumbled back, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the fingers moved, tapping against the wood in a slow, deliberate rhythm, and Mackenzie felt a scream rising in her throat. She clamped a hand over her mouth, trying to stay quiet, trying not to draw the attention of whatever that thing was. But it was too late. The fingers started to grow, inching their way up the side of the stall, the tapping growing louder, more insistent. She bolted. Pushing open the stall door, she made for the bathroom exit, but the thing was faster. It moved with a speed that shouldn't have been possible, latching onto her leg with a grip like iron. The pain was immediate, sharp, as if 1,000 needles had pierced her skin. Mackenzie screamed, a sound that echoed off the tile walls, a sound that should have brought Chris running, but he didn't come. She kicked at the thing, desperate to break free, and to her surprise it let go. She didn't waste a second, sprinting for the door, her heart pounding in her ears. But when she reached the door, it wouldn't open. No matter how hard she pushed, it wouldn't budge. It was as if the air itself had solidified, trapping her inside. Then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room, a thick, suffocating blackness that pressed in on her from all sides. And in that darkness, she heard the stall door burst open behind her. Wood splintered, metal screeched, and something big, moved towards her. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she fumbled for the door handle. Her fingers brushed cold metal, and she turned the knob, praying that it would open, that she could escape. The door swung wide, and Mackenzie fell through, landing hard on the gravel outside. She scrambled to her feet, breathing hard, her eyes fixed on the bathroom. The light flickered back on, illuminating the empty space, but it wasn't empty. The creature, whatever it was, had stopped at the edge of the door. It lingered there, its form just a black silhouette against the dim light. Then it spoke in a voice that wasn't quite human. "Help me, Chris. Help me, please." Mackenzie froze. It was her voice. Exactly her voice. The same pitch, the same inflection. But it wasn't her. She looked around wildly, searching for Chris, and saw him standing by the pond, his face pale, his eyes wide with confusion. He didn't see her. He only heard the thing in the bathroom calling out to him with her voice. "No, Chris!" Mackenzie screamed, but her voice was lost in the night. He couldn't hear her. He couldn't see her. All he heard was the creature's cries for help. The fog rolled in, thick and fast, swallowing the park in a blanket of white. Mackenzie watched in horror as Chris moved towards the pond, towards the thing that was pretending to be her. It lunged, a black mass of shadow and speed, hitting the water with a splash. The creature's voice, her voice, cried out again, "Help me, Chris," as it thrashed in the shallow water. Without hesitation, Chris dove in after it. Mackenzie screamed, running towards him, but the fog was too thick, too dense. She couldn't see him anymore, couldn't hear him over the pounding of her own heart. When she reached the edge of the pond, there was nothing, just the dark, still water, and a few bubbles breaking the surface. She called his name, diving in after him, but the water was too cold, too dark. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She surfaced, gasping for air, but Chris was gone. The creature was gone, and she was alone. Mackenzie staggered out of the water, collapsing on the grass. Her phone was still in her pocket, miraculously dry, and with shaking hands she dialed 911. She told them everything, but she knew they didn't believe her. They would never believe her. The police came, the divers came, but they never found Chris. They never found anything. That was a year ago. And Mackenzie still hears the creature's voice in her nightmares, calling out to her with her own voice, crying for help in the darkness.